My husband James and I embarked on the journey of building our family home together when we tied the knot. It was, without a doubt, the most significant investment of my life. We made a joint decision to cherish and celebrate our family home. But there's something I need to admit. I've already cleared out all your belongings. I never anticipated our family home would be separated from us and turn into to James like this. James and I exchanged our vows 3 years ago, and it was shortly after that we started constructing our dream family home, dutifully making mortgage payments. I can still vividly recall the fresh scent that greeted us as we first entered our newly built house, the warm smile of my beloved husband, and the spacious living room flooded with morning sunlight through its expansive windows. It was everything James and I had ever wished for. Since we were building our home, James was incredibly receptive to my input. I was especially particular about the kitchen's design and the size and placement of the windows. One particular window, on Sundays around 2 p.m., bathed the room in just the right amount of sunlight. It was in that cozy sunlight that James and I would unwind, relax, and even take naps together. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee, made from those delightful coffee beans, filled the room, creating what I would describe as my ultimate moment of happiness. However, let's not sugarcoat it. Our moments of bliss in our family home came at a significant cost. I'm immensely grateful for my consistent and dedicated work that helped us achieve this. When we finally qualified for our mortgage, I patted myself on the back for all the hard work I had put in. James felt the same, undoubtedly. Yet within a month of completing our family home, I received an unexpected call from my mother-in-law, Ava, who had been living separately from us. She inquired, "So you and James have built a family home, haven't you?" Then she dropped the bombshell. "Now that it's finished, I'd like to come live with both of you in that house. Living alone in this dilapidated place is taking a toll on my health. Ava is single and relies on welfare to make ends meet." Our relationship had never been particularly close, as I had only met her a few times during my courtship with James. Truth be told, the prospect of Ava suddenly moving in with us as newlyweds in our cherished home was a daunting one. I understand your perspective, Mia, and I can empathize with how overwhelming it must feel to have my mother living with us. So I've decided to convey to her that it's simply not feasible for her to reside with us and kindly decline her request. Is that okay with you? Thank you. Thankfully, my husband is incredibly considerate of my feelings and understands me deeply. Consequently, when Ava broached the idea of living with us, my husband declined her request. 2 years later, James and I welcomed our first child into the world. Perhaps thinking this was a good opportunity, Ava once again proposed the idea of moving in with us. She reasoned, "Isn't it challenging to manage the baby and handle all the household chores by yourself? If I were to live with you all, I could certainly assist in caring for the baby and taking care of the house. Moreover, it's a wonderful opportunity, so please consider allowing me to join you." Admittedly, taking care of a baby and managing household tasks is demanding, and I genuinely appreciated the offer of assistance from Ava. Furthermore, I had plans to return to work eventually, and having additional help with the baby seemed like a wise decision. So I thought, why not give it a try? Ava appeared genuinely delighted when I agreed to let her move in with us under the condition that she would assist with the baby and the housework. Once we began sharing a home, Ava took her responsibilities seriously and diligently helped with the baby and household chores. She said, "Okay, I'll take care of the laundry and fold the clothes, all right? Thank you. While you're out getting groceries, I'll look after the baby, okay?" She seemed genuinely committed, and I was appreciative of her efforts. However, this initial enthusiasm only lasted about a week. After that, she began slacking off and relaxing once my husband was away or neglecting her duties to care for our son, despite my requests. This pattern repeated frequently, and my trust in Ava started to wane. Her recent lack of commitment to household chores and her reluctance to care for her own child have left me increasingly doubtful about her reliability. With Ava's lax attitude towards housework, it's becoming increasingly challenging. I understand your concerns, and I'll have a talk with my mother about it. My husband has tried to caution her on several occasions, but she's been resistant to his advice. I want to emphasize that I'm doing my best here, and Mia may appear strict, but we need your proper assistance. That's why we agreed to live together initially. Ava seemed taken aback, exclaiming, "Are you trying to kick me out? Please don't be so cold about it. Don't evict me because of this." Each time James warned her, she either shifted the blame onto me or resorted to tears to elicit sympathy. Consequently, Ava persistently remained in our home. As her willingness to help with our son continued to decline, my anxiety around her increased. I expressed my concerns to my husband, saying, "Honey, I'm genuinely afraid to let our son be around Ava like this. I really want her to leave our home as soon as possible." Understanding my apprehensions, my husband decided to rent an apartment for Ava, hoping it would motivate her to leave our house. Before I knew it, our living room was overflowing with Ava's belongings. I had to hold our son constantly to prevent him from encountering Ava's clutter or putting things in his mouth. Despite our repeated warnings, Ava remained unchanged, and we were determined to convince her to leave our home. Then a distressing moment occurred when our son went missing from his room, where he was supposed to be napping. I panicked and frantically searched the house, only to discover Ava taking our son outside without our permission. Infuriated, I demanded, "What are you doing? How dare you take our son out without asking us first? Do you realize how worried I was?" Ava's response was rather surprising. She nonchalantly explained, "I just wanted to show off my grandchild a bit. You shouldn't worry so much. People might want to share in our joy. You're being too loud with your shouting." I couldn't believe Ava's audacity in taking our son out without informing me, and she didn't display any remorse. This incident also enraged my husband. Without hesitation, we made the decision to have Ava leave our home. 1 year has passed since that day. Our son had just turned 1 year old and was taking his first tentative steps. Then tragedy struck when my husband was involved in a fatal accident on his way home from work one day. I was left speechless, grappling with the sudden loss of my husband. Why did he have to leave us? What would become of my small son? At James's funeral, I was overwhelmed by sorrow, unable to stop my tears from flowing. It was during this difficult moment that Ava approached me. "Hello, Nia. It's been a while," she said softly. "I never imagined we'd meet again under these circumstances." My heart ached for Ava, as she had also experienced the loss of her own son. The pain a mother feels when losing a child runs deep, and I realized I couldn't be the only one mourning James. I gathered my strength and replied to Ava, trying to suppress my tears. "It was so sudden," I admitted. "Indeed," she agreed. "So since the family home belongs to my son, I should inherit it, right?" I was taken aback. "Huh? What do you mean? And leave the furniture too?" Her words left me utterly confused. We were both mourning our beloved, and she began discussing property and assets that seemed so out of place. I stammered, "Even if you say that, the house cost around $500,000 to build, not to mention the mortgage we still have to pay." Ava seemed nonchalant. "Oh well, you'll handle that, won't you?" I couldn't believe she was bringing up these matters at James's funeral. Unsure of how to respond, I said, "I'm not sure this is the right time to discuss this. We're at James's funeral after all." Ava insisted, "It's crucial that we address this issue." I was growing increasingly frustrated with her insensitivity. "Not now, we'll talk about it later. But will I get the house?" Her persistence was becoming unbearable. I finally had enough. "Ava, that's enough. This is James's funeral. If you continue like this, please leave immediately." My stern words silenced her, and she walked away. I couldn't comprehend what was going through her mind when she had just lost her own son. In the days that followed, after all the funeral proceedings were over, I managed to regain some composure. I couldn't remain in sorrow forever. I knew I had to be strong and work hard to provide a good life for my son. I started by enrolling him in a daycare center and returning to work. My days had become incredibly busy with work and household chores, leaving my clothes, desk, and work items all in disarray. However, upon closer inspection, it appeared that my expensive clothes, accessories, the TV, the large fridge, and more had been discarded as if they were trash. I couldn't believe my eyes. "What perfect timing. You live here, right?" I questioned aloud. "Well, what's the cost of this move anyway?" The mover who was present engaged me in conversation and presented a bill for services rendered, which I couldn't quite comprehend. It was only after carefully listening to the mover that I discovered Ava had hired him. I was bewildered. Was Ava in my house at this moment? I tried to enter, but strangely, the front door wouldn't budge. Could it be that Ava had changed the locks? I began to wonder if she somehow obtained my house key amidst the commotion of James's funeral. I immediately dialed Ava's number. "What is the meaning of this, Ava? How dare you enter my house without permission and dispose of my belongings without consulting me?" Ava's response was chilling. "What's wrong with me taking my own son's things? You're not a family anymore, so leave." I was taken aback. "Excuse me. Just because James is no longer with us doesn't mean we're not a family. Get out before I report you for trespassing." Ava abruptly hung up the phone. I couldn't believe her selfishness and audacity. I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my house. However, my son started crying and I couldn't stay outside indefinitely. I decided it would be best to check into a hotel or go to my parents' house. I instructed the movers to store my belongings temporarily and left the premises. A week later, I received a distressed call from Ava. The police have come here, and they seem intent on making me leave the house. Please do something about it. I was incredulous. She was the one who had evicted me, and now she was seeking my help. Ava's selfishness knew no bounds. I retorted, even if you say that, I am no longer your family either. We've gone through a post-mortem divorce settlement. She seemed surprised. Post-mortem divorce? I explained, yes, it's a legal procedure to sever ties between myself and the relatives of my deceased husband. While I will inherit the house as James's spouse, I've legally cut ties with you, and I have no obligation to allow you to reside in my house or provide support. Ava responded heartlessly, well, I did as you wished, considering we're no longer family. But I took care of the baby. You're so ungrateful, and you're incredibly cold and strict, Ava retorted, seemingly oblivious to the fact that her actions were wrong. Instead, she grew angry and defensive. It was clear that she didn't recognize the gravity of her behavior or her lack of contribution to our son's care. In my view, I owed her nothing, but I had anticipated this response from her. I sighed and responded, if you insist, then fine, you can continue to live there. Ava's tone shifted. Oh really? You mean I can stay? You said that right. I clarified, yes, you can stay, but you'll need to pay the entire remaining mortgage for the house as a lump sum. Ava seemed taken aback. Excuse me? Why should I pay the mortgage when it's already been paid up to now? I explained firmly, you're only responsible for the outstanding mortgage amount. It's a significant sum, but that's the deal. Ava's frustration was evident. What? How am I supposed to pay off a mortgage for a house that's only 3 years old and all in one go? I asserted, if you can't, then the house is legally mine, and you, who are not my family, can be reported for trespassing. I hung up the phone after making my point. I didn't mention that we had insurance to cover the mortgage after my husband's passing, as it wasn't necessary for Ava to know. A few days later, I finally regained access to our house, but it was in disarray. Furniture was damaged and my clothing was in disarray. I documented the damage, taking photos and noting the cost of everything when Ava had kicked me out of the house. Even though I filed an insurance claim, it was unlikely to be fully compensated since Ava couldn't afford to reimburse the entire amount. Nevertheless, I considered these records as a potential safeguard against any future actions she might take against me. Subsequently, Ava contacted me, requesting a payment of $1,000 as a fine for trespassing. I chose to ignore it. It seemed incomprehensible that she saw herself as the victim in this situation and expected me to pay her. In the end, Ava was unable to pay the fines, found guilty of malicious intent, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. After serving her sentence, Ava contacted me again, sounding desperate. Please, I'm in real trouble. I have nowhere to go, and I don't know what to do. It seemed she was using a payphone, likely relying on contributions from random people to make her calls, as the line cut out a few times while she was speaking. It appeared that she had no home to return to. The apartment my husband had rented for Ava to persuade her to leave has long been vacated. As for the family home that James and I built, I decided to sell it out of concern that Ava might return. It was a necessary step, Ava, and our paths are now completely separate. I urge you to stop bothering me and find your own way in life. Ava seemed taken aback. What? I reiterated my stance and promptly ended the call. I then set up my phone to block any further communication from Ava. That was the end of my involvement with Ava, who appeared to lack the motivation to live independently. I resolved to raise my son to be strong and self-reliant, ensuring that he could thrive on his own. With this in mind, I gently touched the photo of James with our son,